Welcome to The Swing of Things, the US Rowing podcast produced in partnership with Row 360. This episode is sponsored by Broadridge Financial Solutions. I'm your host and CEO of US Rowing, Amanda Kraus. In this episode, we take a look at US Rowing's DEI roadmap, which is a core part of our wider strategic plan. But before we do this, let's get a quick update from our friends across the pond, Ben and Tom from Row 360, to get their take on what's been going on around the world in rowing.
Thanks, Amanda. Since the last episode, we've been in Paris for the World Rowing Under-19 Championships. And, well, they were quite a contrast in terms of weather compared to the under-23s. Loads of rain, lots of storms and high winds. They even had to delay racing by a day and then curtail it by a day. So 5 days scheduled became 3 days of racing and very short intervals.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see the course that will be used for the Olympic rowing competition next summer. Obviously still a lot to do to get it looking like an Olympic venue, but it was interesting to see the sort of bare bones of it. When the wind did pick up, it was very rough, not a lot of shelter. I'm sure it will look fantastic come Paris, but the racing was nail-biting as always nonetheless.
I mean, the race, the regatta, for me anyway, was the women's eights. Absolutely incredible racing all the way down the track. Less than a quarter of a second between the top four crews. The US just edged out. In fourth place. And Great Britain, I think they probably thought they were racing for a medal, came out right in the last dying strokes to take the win. So yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, it was incredible. I remember as they came past my position about 100 metres from the line, I was certain that GB were going to be the ones edged out into fourth, and they ended up getting gold. So it all came together in the last few seconds.
So one gold medal for the US. That was in the Cox 4. Great job by the women to get onto the top step of the podium. Perhaps not where we expected, at least. So probably a lot of motivation to come back next year and to get back on track, perhaps.
That's right. The US junior team normally are very strong, and I'm sure that they would have certainly hoped for more medals than they got.
So we've had our first glimpse of the Paris Olympic and Paralympic venue, and now, right on our doorstep, is the World Rowing Championships for 2023 in Belgrade, Serbia, and that's going to be the first opportunity the athletes have for qualifying for that Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games.
This will be the most pressured of the World Championships in the Olympic cycle. The athletes really want to get their tickets booked to the Games next year so that they can have that out the way and just concentrate on their preparation for the event rather than having to worry about going through various other channels like the final Olympic qualification regatta next year. You've been through this process yourself, Tom. Do you have any thoughts on what it'll be like going into it?
Absolutely, you're right to say it does. It brings a slightly different flavour, a little bit of a different dynamic to the World Championships before the Olympics. You know, the B finals, a lot of events, are top 9. So the B finals become really spicy. Semi-finals, even some quarterfinals become super pressurized because you don't necessarily have anything to win, but you certainly have something to lose. So your path to qualification can end very early in the regatta. Certainly on the water, but even on the banks, you just have a bit more of an edge around the boat park.
As a spectator, I always notice you never see anyone celebrating a win of a B final quite like you do at an Olympic qualification regatta.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like in the men's eights and the women's eights, it's top 5. So you're going to have people, jubilant and like pumped for winning their medals, and then literally crossing the line are going to be people who know that their shot at trying to get to Paris the way they intended hasn't happened. But I guess counter to that, this is looking down the line, but the New Zealand men's eight, they went through the final Olympic qualification regatta, so the last chance saloon for getting into an Olympics before Tokyo, and they went on to win the Olympics at Tokyo. So it's not everything's, you don't give up for sure, but this is important.
Because obviously there are other chances to qualify next year. We have the continental qualification regattas, the final Olympic qualification regatta in Lucerne. So why are they so keen to get qualified now at this World Championships?
You want to create as many opportunities to get to the Olympics. You want to have as many seats, tickets in your pocket early on, because then you don't have to peak twice in an Olympic year. And on top of that, the selection is just slightly less, tough, slightly less aggressive in that very pressurized Olympic year. The other thing to just make clear is when you're qualifying in the World Championships the year before, so in this case Belgrade, it's the boat class that you're qualifying, not the individual athlete. Whereas in the final Olympic qualification regatta, it's the individual athlete. So if someone gets sick or injured and can't race, that's a huge problem. Whereas if you've got your qualification ticket from this World Championships, it's not a problem.
It gives the coaches and the selectors a lot more flexibility.
Right, exactly.
Yes, that's all to look forward to in Belgrade, Serbia next week for us. We'll be there. The US national team will be there. It'll be really interesting to see how they do. I think we've seen a few glimpses of brilliance from them at certainly in Varese at World Cup 2. And this is obviously the first games under the leadership of Yossi Verdonschot. So it'll be fascinating to see how they do, and we'll be watching with bated breath. So that's all from us. We'll hand back to you, Amanda.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. That was Tom and Ben from Row 360. And now let's turn to our main feature. It's my pleasure to introduce US Rowing's Chief Community Engagement Officer, Jenny Trays, and Kirsten Feldman, a member of the US Rowing Board and our DEI committee. Jenny, Kirsten, it's really good to see you both. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Amanda.
Great to be here.
You worked very closely on this plan with the DEI committee. Kirsten, you were at the time co-chair of the DEI committee. Can you talk about the work and in particular, how the consultant Truclusion helped with this process? Kirsten, do you want to start?
Yes. So we started by creating a working group, a mix of staff and DEI committee members. And the first thing we did was a listening tour. So we had a whole group of clubs, scholastic programs that are trying to do the work, rowing businesses like Hydro, Pocock Foundation, coaches, and others, to really allow us to understand from the community at large what they thought ought to be in the plan. And in particular, Truclusion had done work with swimming as well as US youth soccer. And that experience they had in other NGBs and other sports was really helpful to us. The consultant facilitated brainstorming and guided conversations that began with hundreds of ideas from the committee at large, and that ultimately got us to our four main goals and various initiatives for the 6-year plan, including cultivate a welcoming environment, supporting clubs and athletes, investing in leadership and coaching, and enhancing our high-performance pipeline.
So this plan covers a lot, but we're going to talk about just a few specific pieces to help our listeners and our members understand what kind of things are important to US Rowing. In the survey, you found that all groups, more than 90% actually enjoy rowing, which is great and not super surprising. But in follow-up questions about whether they feel valued by their teammates or their coaches, we start to see some real differences. Can you talk about this data and why it's important?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the data, to me, the 90% shows that people love rowing. I think that's something that's so relatable. And I think often we hear from people from more quote unquote traditional backgrounds who are white and straight and more affluent. They say, oh, they're just not interested in rowing. But I think this data shows us that they are interested in rowing, and we need to do work to make all people from different backgrounds want to stay in rowing. In particular, we saw that 66% of BIPOC members of US Rowing do not show up openly. So when you're hiding things or self-conscious about who you are and you can't be your unique self when you show up and feel valued in that, you're not thinking about how much you enjoy rowing, how you want to tell a friend, how you want to get better at rowing, gain more speed. So I think there's a lot we can do culturally to make it a more welcoming place.
The data really highlighted to me issues about the business of rowing. So a lot of people start rowing, but a lot of people quit rowing. And that's retention. So as many people leave the sport as start the sport, which explains why our sport hasn't grown enough. And so by increasing retention, which is helping people feel they have opportunity and they're welcome, we can really grow the sport very easily. So one of the data points was that if we increase retention by 4%, within 7 years, the sport will grow to 30%. And that means more membership dues to US Rowing, which makes us more financially solid. It means more revenues to local clubs. it really helps to improve the business of rowing.
And what do we have planned at US Rowing to address this issue? How are we going to help with this retention?
Yeah, I think there's so much in the plan. I'll highlight a few things. I think it starts with bringing an awareness, which is why we wanted to highlight some of that data. That's a key point of this plan is collecting data and metrics that will allow us to show progress in our efforts and really be able to speak to, okay, we are successful in our goal of creating a more welcoming environment, or we are successful enhancing the high performance pipeline. And then training and education is going to be critical. I know we just had the podcast on our online learning platform. So taking what we know and what the DEI committee is sharing with us and advising us on, and taking that to our members, our coaches, our administrators. And then we also have really exciting plans for funding, scholarships for athletes from underrepresented backgrounds who have a lot of potential but may not have the social or financial resources to stay in the sport, and also funding to programs. So we know that there's a lot of good work happening out there. Those are some key things that I'm super excited about.
Going back to the data that's shared in the plan, it looks like we discovered a steep decline in female coaching participation as women who are coaching get older, with, I believe it was almost 2/3 leaving the profession after the age of 35, which is much higher than male coaches. So a two-part question: why is this happening, and what does the plan include to address this issue?
I was a woman coach myself for a few years back in the day. And I think one thing for me, as I got older, was the schedule. I think we don't necessarily have full-scale data on this, but anecdotally, it's scheduling, it's the demand on especially mothers who are women coaches. But I would say more than anything, it's probably the culture of rowing. And I think when we talk about setting behavioral expectations, or what is going to fly in rowing, or how we communicate with each other, how we treat each other and respect each other, who is welcome into boathouses, that extends not just to athletes, but to coaches and female coaches and women coaches in particular. We plan to double down on coach education, and I think that is to invest in women coaches and make sure that they have all the tools and resources they need to thrive as individuals, connecting women with other women, creating cohorts of women who are going through the same thing so they don't feel alone. We're exploring a pilot women in leadership program as well. So more ideas to come, but there's also a lot already in the plan.
Kirsten, is there anything you want to add on that?
Well, I would just like to say that when I started rowing many years ago, we were the first group of women allowed into our club. And it was a very controversial decision for the club at the time, one they only took because the alternative was bankruptcy. So women in rowing has not been that long a phenomena. And I think it's great that we're really looking at the culture and to see where we are now and to help those women trying to make rowing a career as they move forward.
Thank you. This is an exciting piece I'd love to talk about. One of the ways you've made a call to action, and this is the staff at US Rowing with the DEI committee, is to ask rowers and friends of rowers to join the new United We Row movement or initiative. And in particular, you've asked individuals to pledge their support in a variety of ways, as rowers, as coaches, referees, administrators. Can you talk about United We Row and what specifically we're asking stakeholders to do? And Jenny, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. So United We Row is really a brand, a movement, an initiative that encapsulates everything that we're doing in this diversity, equity, and inclusion plan and beyond, that makes rowing a more welcoming, accessible, diverse, faster place for rowers to be. It is, everything from what we talked about when it comes to grants and scholarships, to the certification program, to simply taking action within your own boathouse. One cool thing that we've put together is a pledge, and this is hopefully a way for people to see that anyone in the rowing community, whether you're a parent who's brand new and has a novice rower, a volunteer who comes out in your local community to support a regatta, to a lifelong coach, there's something that you can do, whether it's being kind to a teammate, offering someone a ride home, starting an adaptive program. There's everything in there, and there's something for you.
Yeah, I loved what was outlined in this, and I think my favorite part of the pledge was, when someone new walks into my boathouse, I will introduce myself and welcome them. It might seem so simple and straightforward, but for new people walking into a boathouse, it can be very intimidating, right? The sport can be intimidating, and the equipment and the huge people. And so just that one step of, hey, I'm so-and-so and welcome, or good morning. I thought that was a really nice piece to include. Kirsten, what is there a part of the plan that stands out for you as your most favorite, or a piece that you're most excited about?
Yeah, the part that I'm excited about and looking forward to is grant making to athletes and to clubs. So many clubs at the grassroots level, including my own club in Connecticut, are doing great work on expanding their reaching out into new communities. 2 young women from my club went to youth nationals just this season that came out of one of those programs. And so helping to elevate them, spread best practices across the country, use them as demonstration projects for other clubs to learn from is the part of the program I'm very excited about.
And this is to both of you. How will you know the plan is succeeding? Each of you give me something tangible you might see in a few years that really you can point to and say, aha, this plan we created with the DEI committee, with True Inclusion, we are seeing success. Is there something specific you would point to? And Jenny, I'll start with you.
I would say the data. I think we are so much at USRowing really trying to invest in our infrastructure and how we do things and our systems. And I think we've made such progress in so many areas in the last 18 months that I've been here, but the data telling the story of retention, growth in membership, growing our sport, those are the things that I think we can point to if this plan is going well. And I think the tricky part is that takes time. So it's not going to happen overnight, and there's probably things that we can say, oh, it's going better. But I think the true test will be how the sport grows in the next few years.
What about for you, Kirsten?
So for me, it's 2 things. I want to go to youth nationals in a few years and walk around the regatta and see the change for my very eyes, and see that the group of youngsters rowing looks different than it does now or than it did a few years ago. And we'll all know it when we see it. And secondly, I dream of the day that our national team reflects America. And when it does, that we get sponsorships of companies or organizations that want to be behind the look of U.S. rowing. And that in turn will bring more resources to the athletes themselves, to the national team in general. But, at the grassroots and at the highest levels, for us to visibly see the difference.
Which brings me to another question then that's connected. How does this DEI plan, and Kirsten, I'm looking at you here, how does this DEI plan in your mind actually help with high performance?
I think it's essential for high performance. I come out of banking, where our most important resource was our talent and people. And I feel the same way with sport. So just as a business, you need to attract and recruit the top talent, and you need to retain them. We need to do the same. So I see the DEI plan as a core part of attracting all the talent that we can find, but we have to retain them as well. So our DEI efforts are essential for the for our national team, for our Olympic team, and for winning medals down the road.
And is there anything else either of you want to make sure people hear about this plan as they're sitting down to read it, or maybe they've just read it? Any parting words of wisdom or insight?
Well, what I'd like to say is that our consultant at Truclusion told me that this is the only plan from an NGB or a sports body that they've seen that is truly integrated with the organizational plan. So USRowing staff and the DEI committee spent many months integrating the DEI plan into the USRowing overall plan. And to me, that's going to ensure that we really do make the progress on DEI that we want to, because it really is that integrated model.
And Jenny?
I would say two things. Hopefully people can start to see themselves in rowing and as a culture builder and a culture carrier, and how they can impact others' experiences in rowing. And then the other thing I would say is we want to hear from you. No matter how you feel about this plan, we want to hear from our members. So please fill out our surveys and reach out.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to talk about the plan. And Kirsten, thank you so much for all of the time you have spent, especially as a volunteer with both the US Rowing Board and Foundation, and also your leadership with the DEI committee. It's been so impactful. And, we now have a roadmap, which is really exciting, and really appreciate both of you taking the time to walk us through it today.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
It's been my pleasure.
Now it's time to hear from our Chief High Performance Officer, Josie Verdonschot. He's with the team getting ready for the 2023 World Rowing Championships. Hi, Josie. It's good to see you there. Can you tell us where you are and what you're doing?
Well, actually, I'm doing nothing. I'm sitting on a nice bench in front of the hotel where our men's quad, men's 4, and men's 8 are currently housed. It's on the lake of Varese, actually the course where the World Cup was. And they've got this beautiful hotel 30 paces from the boathouse, and I think it's a good place to be.
That's very convenient. And how's the weather? How's the training? How's the team?
Well, the team is split up in two parts: the women and the men's double, the light men's double, the men's single, light men's single. They are at Erba near Como. Beautiful spot, but it would get a little bit crowded. So for the guys, we have the special treat being on a rowing course here. So basically, we've got all our Olympic boats collected, divided over 2 places in Italy. We're preparing for Worlds, and we're training like hell. And in all honesty, I've got a good feeling.
Is it hot?
It is, but it's a matter of getting used to it is one thing, because it's almost 100. But it's not the same humidity as we would have in New Jersey, for instance, or in Florida. Plus, you can select the hours. So we go out early when for the afternoon when it's a bit too hot. We train indoors. It's not a big deal. But life is beautiful. I mean, we've got this special recovery strategy called popsicles. Mm-hmm. So after training, just take a popsicle and the mind is happy. So no problems.
Are you eating a lot of pasta?
Personally, I do not, but there is this urgency for most athletes to eat a lot of pasta, and I can tell you they get their treat of that. Both hotels, for the women as well as the men, they are treated like kings. Both hotels know exactly what the athletes want. So from that respect, lots of pastas, but also lots of healthy food, vegetables, whatever you need. We're set up more or less like how a team should be set up in preparation for the qualification regatta.
How are you feeling about preparation for Worlds?
Well, we know just our own speed. We cannot predict the speed of the others. But looking at it from my perspective, I think the boats are more or less where we would expect them to be. We know that probably our ambition would be to qualify 8 boats as a minimum. 9 or 10 boats would be great, including para, maybe 11 or 12. That's a lot compared to qualification in Linz before Tokyo. So I would say we're in a good position. Speed of most boats is good, and now it's just about execution and focus.
When do you head to Belgrade?
Well, we stay at our location until Wednesday because obviously being in Europe has two advantages. One, you don't have the jet lag after the trip, etc. So we will stay here as long as possible until Wednesday. Wednesday evening, we fly to Belgrade. So we train there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And at Sunday, the Worlds start.
Well, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and we will see you soon. And best of luck to everybody.
I'll see you soon. I'm looking forward to see you in Belgrade because then we are there where we should be, at a racing course.
That's right. See you there.
See you. Bye.
That's all for this episode of The Swing of Things. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Kirsten, Jenny, Yosi, and the Row 360 team. Don't forget, we want to hear from you, our listeners. Email your thoughts, feedback, and any questions you might have to theswingofthings@usrowing.org, and we'll answer as many as we can on the next show. All that remains is for me to wish the best of luck to our US Rowing team competing this week at the World Championships in Belgrade, Serbia. I know you will do us all proud. See you next time, and thanks for listening.